first episode of the Steel Ball Run anime just released, and it is the highest rated anime of all time. This is part 7 of JoJo's Bizarre Adventures, and I want to talk about it, because this is a franchise that took me a while to get invested in, but once I did, I was hooked. And you bet your sweet Bippy, I was counting down the days until they finally adapted part 7. Spoilers if you haven't watched episode 1. With that out of the way, let's get started. So right off the bat, I want to mention that because it's only one episode, most of what I'll be talking about is in regards to how well it was adapted from the source material. This will include changes, characters, and the overall animation style. Now, I want to get my only complaint out of the way. It's a 47-minute episode that's conveying the entire first stage of the race. This means that a lot of big moments from the manga, unfortunately, were going to be cut. Alongside that, they also simplified some things, such as Sandman and Johnny Joestar's backstory. Obviously, they made sure to keep the important stuff, but they did leave out a lot of the bizarre moments from these first 11 chapters that, while aren't necessary in the context of the actual story, they do help paint a clearer picture of some of these characters. Now, granted, they could flesh out these moments later in the series. However, one concern I have is how they're going to release it. I don't think it'll be released in batches like Stone Ocean, and I don't even think it's only going to be 9 episodes, one covering each stage of the race. That'd be pretty ballsy, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't have this slight notion in the back of my mind, because theoretically, Netflix could release one 45-minute to an hour-long episode a month, which forces fans to constantly pay their subscription price until the end of the year. Anyways, getting into the good stuff now, one of the things I really liked was how they adapted the characters into the anime. Gyro, they fucking nailed. Just his aura and the way he presents himself has him stealing the show in every scene he's in. I also really liked Pocoloco. He's another character who had a ton of scenes removed in the anime, but they still managed to do a great job at conveying his character and showcasing how he got where he is because he's just lucky. The introduction to our protagonist, Johnny Joestar, was also handled very well. Him being a character who's meant to grow and develop over the course of the season meant they had to hit the nail on the head to showcase him at his low point, which, while they had to cut some things for time, they also added some new details to his backstory in the anime, such as including the death of his older brother Nicholas. The pacing was also great in what is otherwise a very slow burn in the manga. It truly doesn't feel like a 47-minute episode, and it does an excellent job at keeping the viewers engaged. However, it's worth noting that because it's so fast-paced, if you are second screening and watching while on your phone, you will miss quite a bit of information. But then again, if you need a phone to watch JoJo, then why are you even watching this anime? I was worried they weren't going to showcase the actual race until like the very end of the episode because of how hard it is to animate. But no, half of the episode focuses on the entire first stage of the race, and it doesn't even feel like it slows down when characters are interacting with each other. I also have to give props to David Production, because they did a great job at integrating the 3D CGI for the horses, and blending it with the 2D elements of the anime. Like, this animation team has done a great job at adapting the anime to match Araki's art style in the manga. I truly thought each part was made by a different studio. They just have immense talent when it comes to art and animation. The soundtrack also slaps. It goes hand to hand with the animation, and the rhythm of the themes just flows from one character to the next. Characters like Johnny and Pocoloco got some original scores, while others like Gyro and Diego got a remix from their original universe. The Spin is a remix of the sound effect used for Hamon, while the audio boom for Dio's time stop can be heard as Diego speeds through the race. All of these little attention to details just shows the studio knew what they were doing when adapting this franchise. They did make one major change from the manga, however, that fans of JoJo's will probably notice. They made the conscious decision to not showcase any stands in this first episode. Instead, they let the actual story take centerfold, whereas in the manga, Pocoloco's stand, Heiya, would have been introduced by this point. We do hear his voice towards the end of the episode, but for the most part, the supernatural element of the show is heavily focused on the spin in this first episode. It does help immerse the viewers in the competition of the race and keeps the start as grounded as possible, but it can be misleading at times for anime-only watchers. Another thing they chose not to include was having a reporter mention that Lucy's actual age is 14 during Steven Steele's press conference. This isn't the biggest deal in the world, but I do hope they integrate that detail later in the series, because it is kind of important to Steven's character and making the audience think differently of him before subverting their expectations with the dynamic of their relationship later on. That's actually another comment I want to make. They kind of watered down a lot of the historical aspects in this first episode that's otherwise pretty important to the foundation of some of the characters. The series takes place in 1890s America, which means there was a lot of questionable decisions that were happening, and I feel like they glossed over some of these details, like how Sandman is competing in the race so he can use the prize money to buy back his tribe's stolen land. Like, yeah, that stuff was bad, but that's why it's also history. That doesn't mean it's wrong to talk about it, especially when building a fictional world based on real historical events. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but for a team that clearly took inspiration from Red Dead Redemption when adapting the manga into anime, I can't help but notice that they still sugarcoated some of the more controversial but necessary information to the story. But then again, that could just be because of the pacing. All I know is that for the most part, this was a great start to the Steel Ball Run anime, and it absolutely earned the title of highest rated anime of all time with this debut. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about this because I really enjoyed the first episode of the Steel Ball Run anime. It definitely wasn't a perfect episode, but it was damn near faithful to the source material, and hopefully, as the series continues, they'll start to fill in some of these gaps to help paint a clearer picture of the overall story. I do want to make a follow-up review midway through and at the end of Part 7, so make sure to leave a like and comment on this video if you want to hear more of my thoughts. Anyways, that about summarizes Episode 1 of Steel Ball Run. Remember to tip your bartenders and go to church. That's really about it. So,